It is 6:30. We will call our meeting to order. It's Tuesday, September 25th. And we will note that we do have a quorum here of the entire Planning Commission is in attendance. Welcome, Mr. Norman. Our first item of business is to consider the minutes from our September 4th meeting. And if there aren't any comments or corrections, I will entertain a motion. Any comments or corrections?
I move to approve the minutes from September 4th.
We have a motion from Mrs. Chaffin to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Latsis. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. There are no announcements, so we will go to item number 1 on the agenda. Case number P17-018, Sunnydale, the Highline Crossing Specific Development Plan. And from the county, Molly Oakard-Larson will present the county's position.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Molly Oakard-Larson, Senior Planner with the Public Works Department. The county attorney has reviewed the public notice and has determined that the applicant has met all the public notice requirements, thereby establishing jurisdiction. I did provide you with a handout from J.M. Fay that came in after the staff report was downloaded. Also, I heard there was 2 corrupt documents. One was the letter of intent describing the project, and the other one was a letter from George Nez. And Mr. Nez is here tonight, but I'd be more than happy to run over after my presentation and make copies for you if you'd like to see those documents. What's before you this evening is a specific development plan for 56 townhome development situated between the Highland Canal and South Quebec Way, and is also adjacent to the South Quebec Trailhead. This application proposes to rezone the property from R1 to PUD in order to develop the applicant to develop the property as multifamily. The proposed development is located in the 4 square mile area and is subject to the 4 square mile sub-area plan. The sub-area plan does identify the land use allowed on this property as multifamily with a density of 13 to 25 DUs per acre. This application is proposing a density of 13.58 DUs per acre. Staff recommends this application be approved based on the findings in the staff report. The applicant is here tonight to do a presentation for you, and before I turn it over to him, I was wondering if you had any questions for me.
Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll hear from the applicant, and please give us your name and address.
Thank you, Molly. My name is Warren James. I'm a principal of Riva Development Partners, located at 116 West Illinois Street in Chicago, Illinois. With me this evening is my business partner, Matt Nix, also principal of Riva Development Partners, and Dan Rodriguez from Manhart Consulting, who prepared the plans, and Chris McGranahan of LSC Transportation Consulting, who prepared the traffic report. Thank you very much for giving your time and attention. I hope to move through a series of slides, not too quickly, but to take enough time so you get a better understanding of our proposal. By way of background, I feel young, but I've been in the business for 31 years. My father was a builder developer before me, and his father before him. So I grew up in the business, and I spent 24 years working with a family business, building moderate to larger scale for sale communities. We occupied a niche between the production and the custom builder. So I'm very familiar with the sticks and bricks side of the business, and I'm very proud of the work that I've achieved and accomplished with my family, designing and developing numerous award-winning communities. After the downturn, family business is still going. That's smart people still working there. But I decided to make my move into multifamily, and I joined with my business partner, Matt Nix, who explained his experience. We've been very busy since 2012 when we started Riva Development, mostly in the Chicago area. We developed the Oaks of Vernon Hills, which is a 330-unit multifamily development on 30 acres in Vernon Hills, Illinois. We've successfully completed Northgate Crossing, a 300-unit development in Wheeling, Illinois. We also completed the 231-unit development in Orland Park, and we are completing this fall a 236-unit development in Deer Park Crossing. While these are much larger scale developments, one of the common threads through all of them is we introduced rental townhomes in each one of these communities. And we did so because my experience in the for sale market told me that it meets a need of people that are at the beginning of the kind of their family cycle and nearing the end. And it appeals to what would have been first-time buyers or people starting a family, and also empty nesters. We found that it's been very attractive in a rental format in each one of these communities as an alternative to the longer-term commitment of home ownership. When we came to Denver, we did so because we recognized that it's a wonderful place to live, and a lot of people are moving to Denver, and there's a lot of demand here. We are not making a short-term commitment. We're making a long-term commitment to Denver. We purchased 4.1 acres of property along the Highline Canal Trail. It's approximately a half mile north of Iliff on South Quebec Way. The intersection there is known as Iliff and Yosemite, but changes name just a little bit further north of that. Our property is located immediately adjacent to the trailhead, the new South Quebec Way trailhead. There were 3 single-family homes and some vacant land. These structures were built as a part of the original subdivision once the property was acquired from Denver Water. As you'll see in the following pictures, the structures are old, dilapidated, and would barely pass as habitable. We have been in the process of securing the necessary abatement and demolition permits and the permits to cap and remove the wells. The 4.1 acre site was identified within the sub-area plan for the 4 square mile plan. It calls for multifamily development ranging in density from a low of 13 to a high of 25 units per acre. We are proposing a density of 13.59 units per acre. So we're at the very low end of the density scale. When you look at the surrounding properties to the east of the Highline Canal Trail, there are many existing older single-family homes, newer single-family subdivisions, and it's admittedly a much less dense development pattern. However, when you move beyond that area of South Uinta and Xenia Court, the area surrounding it is populated principally by multifamily communities. And to the west of the Highline Canal Trail, you find multiple multifamily communities with densities that are near or greater than the proposed site. To look at this in a more graphic representation, Indian Creek at 17.8, Granville at 22 units to the acre, Topaz at 26 units to the acre, Highline Oaks at 20, Sienna at Cherry Creek at 22, Highline Oaks at 18.6, compared to the proposed development at 13.59 units to the acre. The plan itself, let me step back and say the challenge to this site principally is the topography. South Quebec Way is 50 feet lower than the tableland above on South Uinta. It's 30 feet lower than the Highline Canal Trail. So it slopes steeply uphill to the trail itself. So a lot of the homes on the east side, as you can see up here, they enjoy commanding views of the mountains that, to the extent that they're not obscured by the trees that have grown up along the High Line. Our community, like most of the communities that are on the west side, are situated much lower. The design of the community, we spent a great deal of time trying to assess the most appropriate architectural form to integrate with the land and accommodate that significant grade change. There is a pattern of development that emerges north along South Quebec Way. We sometimes refer to as the tuck-under product that has parking at the lowest level of the structure, living at the middle level, and bedrooms at the upper level. But with that parking at the lowest level, that floor, that level is integrated into the land. It's built into the side slope, so that from the High Line Canal Trail perspective, these appear as two-story structures rather than three-story structures. And in every instance in this plan, the buildings that are along the High Line Canal Trail, and I'll point to them, each of these buildings, the primary living level, kitchen, living area, which is the second level of the structure, that primary living level is below the actual High Line Canal Trail. Because it's, when you start here at South Quebec Way, it's 30 feet up to the trail, we can't transition that grade and meet ADA requirements. So part of it is building the product into the land, and the other part is making sure that we meet Colorado Title IX requirements for visitability. Even though these structures aren't designed in a way that accommodates somebody that's wheelchair bound, they are visitable. 24 of the 56 units are visitable by somebody in a wheelchair, and that is as prescribed by Colorado Title IX accessibility. We do so, again, by integrating these buildings into the land. So there's a motor court here, but this driveway slopes up at about 7%, and then it slopes up again to a peak here, and it comes back down, and then it's a more gradual slope coming back to the main entrance. But the challenge by situating the garages at the low level, but the front doors at that middle level, we can allow people that are wheelchair bound to park here or here in the handicap designated stalls, and they can get to the front doors of these units. For somebody who's parking here, we have made many of these units where it's feasible due to the grade change. We've tied a sidewalk in here and brought it all the way around the back and then tied into the decks that are off the primary living level, and that's how we meet the visitability requirements. It was a very iterative process to find the right grades. We have had to step the buildings. We've had to adjust garage floors to make those buildings integrate into the land and match up the appropriate grade and make sure that the slope of the sidewalk around the back meets ADA requirements. That was probably one of the more difficult technical challenge to designing this plan. The other, from a planning standpoint, and we've embraced neo-traditional planning elements for many, many years, and part of that is trying to put front door architecture to the street. Rather than facing a garage door, it's much more pleasant to drive down a street and see front doors and fully developed architecture rather than the garage doors. So when you're driving down, let me see if this pointer will come to life again. Here we go. When you're driving down South Quebec Way, you'll see green space here because this is where we've located the detention at the lowest point on the property. And you notice that you'll see the fully developed elevations above the fence line here, but most importantly, where we're closest to the street, you see front doors. And we've screened the garages from view for passersby. We've tried to create this motor court. When we get to this product type, which is 5 townhomes, 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, this product form repeats itself, but almost all of these buildings are unique in that they're adjusted to accommodate the grade change. This one steps uphill. This steps uphill. These two are constant elevation. This starts to step downhill, and this steps downhill as well. Again, to meet the existing grade and kind of integrate into the land. We've also created a pedestrian path that allows a wheelchair-bound person to traverse the site along a sidewalk that meets the ADA code requirements. We've created a community gathering area here. It has a barbecue station here and a fire pit, and again, trying to situate this between the guest parking areas. We have guest parking over here at the northwest, and we have 2 guest parking areas here. Each one of the townhomes has an individual 2-car garage. In addition to all of the 2-car garages, we have a total of 27 guest parking spaces, of which 2 are handicap accessible. Overall, the design here, and Matt's going to speak a little bit more to who we're designing to, but the product form is, again, one that I've developed many, many times in many iterations, and we're currently building these floor plans in Chicago with great success, which is why we wanted to bring them here. The character, the elevations, and of course the integration to the land has been, refined considerably to meet the particulars of this site. You can never get quite accurate color representation, but what we're showing here is how the buildings step down the side slope. You see on the right-hand side, this is a typical building that would be along, backing up to the Highline Canal. So it's 3 stories with front doors serving each of the units. But what it does is it integrates into that slope. So this is effectively a basement here. You can see how the grade changes rapidly from the garage elevation up to the elevation that faces the Highline Canal Trail. This is building 1. This is what you'd see facing the street. This is what I'm talking about, that front door architecture. We're not turning garages to the street. We're turning front doors in a fully developed front elevation to the street. To further illustrate the relationship of the buildings to the Highline Canal Trail, we used a photograph that I took myself along the Highline Canal Trail. So this is, you can see the South Quebec trailhead and the pedestrian access point here and the path itself. You can see some of the adjacent single-family homes high up on the bluff overlooking the trees, and you can see the proposed, we've rendered them in gray so that you can they pop so you can see. And this is an accurate representation about the elevation and the structure of the building and where it sits. So you can see that the primary living level sits below the Highline Canal Trail. Here's a drone picture taken of the site. We're facing roughly east. You can see the high power lines that run along just south of the subject property. And you can see some of the existing, I'm trying to get this pointer to come to life again, some of the existing structures on the site. And back there is the Highline Canal Trail. And here is the heavy tree cover canopy that's grown up along the canal itself. When we superimpose the 56 townhome units, you can really see how they're situated. This building in particular is still 8 to 10 feet below. The primary living level is well below the Highline Canal Trail. We simply don't have we have to meet ADA code for the maximum rise, and then we integrate into the land. Very similar to what's been done with the townhomes next door. The buildings rise as you come to this point, where the elevation peaks, and then they begin to come back down here. Again, even these 2 buildings are still situated. Their primary living level is below the Highline Canal Trail elevation. Looking at it from another view, you can see the Highline Canal Trail here. You can see the existing tree canopy and the new trailhead here, and these are the high power lines, and here's South Quebec Way. So as we superimpose, obviously we haven't shown any landscaping here. We're just trying to show the scale and the location of the buildings. So you see if you're coming along South Quebec Way from the south, we're trying to set these buildings back as far as we can and present front door architecture to the street. We screen the garages here in the motor court, and then this road rises about 10 feet or more from the entrance up to this point, and then the buildings transition the grade, and then it slopes up again from the back to the Highline Canal Trail. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Nix, who's going to explain to you a little bit more about the property and what we're intending to develop. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren. Matt Nix, Riva Development Partners, 116 West Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. Unlike Warren, I do feel old, but I've only been doing this for 25 years. I think one of the biggest changes I've seen building primarily luxury rental housing over the 20 years is in the last 10 years, the shifting demand in what people are looking for and who these people are that are looking for it. And really, as Warren mentioned, this rental townhome product has been one of the newest trends that we're seeing, and it's really because it appeals to such a wide variety of people. Traditionally, 1- and 2-bedroom apartments were built for young professionals, and they eventually evolved into for-sale housing. What we're seeing now is demand from kind of both ends of the spectrum. We're seeing that this product in particular is very appealing to baby boomers, downsizing empty nesters, who after many years of home ownership are really looking to make a transition, looking for flexibility of renting, looking for maintenance-free communities, and it's a perfect transition for someone coming out of a single-family home. These will range from about 1,500 square feet of a 2-bedroom up to 2,100 square foot 3-bedroom, 2.5 baths, all with 2-car garages. So it's a very nice and easy way for people to transition, and it really offers a lot of flexibility. Similarly, on the other end of the barbell, we'd call the maturing millennials. We've all seen lots and lots of housing being built in urban core and downtown Denver, but what we're seeing is that the millennials age as the boyfriend or girlfriend becomes the husband, as the dog becomes the first child. They're looking for more space, and they're trading off being located right downtown to still being proximate to work, but they're seeking more space, and they're seeking other amenities. And really, we feel that the active lifestyle that these millennials were targeting, they really embrace the square footage. They embrace the garage to hold their bikes, to hold their car with their rack so they can ski, and it's a nice transition. So we're seeing a big demand for this rental townhome. And then finally, young families, just the home purchase decision has been delayed, and it's harder and harder for young families to find that first home to buy. And they're also making pretty important decisions as to where they want to move. So this is a great way for a young family to come into the community, to start to set down roots, and we think it's just a great option for them. This is an example of the product form that we're building, not the exact the elevation or the materials, but this is, as I mentioned, it's luxury housing. It's built to condo quality, for sale standards, the latest design and amenities, really appealing to that renter by choice. They have the means to purchase, but they're really opting for renting for the flexibility. And our typical 3-bedroom plan, as Warren mentioned, the garage is at the lowest level. Really, the primary living level is at the second floor with the kitchen, living, dining, and then the bedrooms on the top floor. And we also make a point of having the master bedroom orient to the best view. So in this particular case, the master bedroom would be looking out over the High Line. Similarly, we have a 2-bedroom plan, so to offer a wider range of pricing. The 2-bedroom at $1,500 will start at about $2,200 a month. The 3-bedroom up to $3,100 to $3,200 a month. And again, some of the larger communities have much more, I will call it, robust amenity packages. What we really keyed in on this site is the natural amenities. Now, we have created, I think, what will be a great community gathering area with a fire pit, place to gather and grill, but really the draw all along to us has been the connection to the High Line Trail. And to that end, I just show a couple of images. The Illinois Prairie Path is an incredibly popular abandoned rail line that's been turned to a trail system in suburban Chicago, very similar to the High Line. And then on the right side, it's the 606 Trail, which is a recently constructed urban rail line that's become an incredibly popular trail. In both cases, plenty of residential develops along the trail, and it's just a wonderful amenity for walkers, bikers, dog walkers. And I should have mentioned, dogs are rapidly becoming one of our most important tenants. And just the ability to access the trail is a wonderful option, so you can see the High Line below. So just to sum things up, we're following the 4 square mile sub-area plan developed in 2005. As Warren walked you through, we've tried to be very thoughtful in handling a challenging site and being sensitive to the views of the High Line and the views from South Quebec. We will be taking down the power lines and extending the sidewalk along South Quebec. Obviously, economic benefits that we've included between park donations and substantial increase in the tax base. And finally, just providing that sort of new housing option that really helps to create, we find that introducing multiple types of housing in a community really helps to create and elevate the community to not just survive but thrive. And with that, we are available, our consultants are available to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I just wanted to add one more thing that if I didn't make it clear. This is a long-term investment for us. This is not something that we intend to build and sell. This is something that Matt and I intend to own and operate for a very long time. So we will be, making a significant investment in the community over the long haul, and we fell in love with the High Line and with this site and see it as a tremendous opportunity to enhance the community. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Molly, do you have any other comments you want to add at this point?
Madam Chair, I think we should have a question over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Glasses first.
Yeah, sorry. Anyone else have a couple of questions? Yeah, the applicant. So a couple of questions for you, the applicant.
Sorry.
Yep, no worries. I just wanted to clarify some measurements as I look at your site plan. So it looks like your buildings, you've got the 15-foot setback, and then is it 25 from your fence line to the actual buildings?
Yes.
So a total of 40?
It's 20. I'm sorry, if you could be more specific as to.
So to your fence line, it looks like you have a 15-foot setback from the canal trail. Is that correct?
The fence itself is intended to be along the property line.
Okay. And then
It's 25 feet from the property line to the actual backs of the buildings.
and how far is it from your fence line, the property line, to the canal?
The setback, the 15-foot minimum setback would be to the patios or decks that are behind the building. So that's what the 15 feet is referencing.
So it's a total of 25.
Correct. It's a total of 25.
And what is the north to south measurement of your buildings? Look, the length looks like they're about 100 to 120 feet long. Is that about right?
Yes.
Thank you. I have some questions, please. It looks like there is some kind of a basement adjacent to the garage area, so a person can exit their garage, go directly into their home. Can you describe to me, on average, what the square footage of that space is on the garage level?
Sure. Let me get to the actual floor plans. As we mentioned, topo is the biggest challenge. So in the instance of the buildings that are on South Quebec Way, those are what you'd consider full 3 stories because they sit at grade, and the garage and that additional room behind the garage shown here, approximately 12 by 14, plus the utility area and the walkway, and half a flight leading to another half flight, and then you come up into the primary living space. So the garages are in about 20 by 20, maybe a little bit larger. Some of them have offsets, but it depends upon where you're situated on the site as to whether or not this is in a basement configuration or if there's windows to it. It really depends if you're digging into the grade. On the 2-bedroom plan, this is 2-car tandem, so this is all basement. In every instance, there may be a window in the back, but there's no living area, but there's additional storage space back here, and the utilities are in their own.
Okay, so what is that storage space when I'm looking at a tandem garage? I'm trying to figure out how much storage space there is in addition to the garage. So
sure. If this plan is 40 feet deep, and it's about 19 feet wide. This garage space, usable garage width is this. I think this is 12, and this is 7, 6.5, 7, and then we've got similar width here. You've got almost 18 by 8 or 9 for storage. You've got the utility closet. You've got room for your garbage cans, and then you've got bikes, kayak, whatever else you need to put down there. That's in the smaller plan. In the larger plan, we do have storage underneath. We do accommodate storage.
That's helpful.
Sorry. We do have, in the larger floor plans, we have storage underneath the stairs as well. And then when you come up the staircase towards the second floor, there's because of the way the stairs are configured, we actually pick up a little closet underneath as well. Suitcases, skis, golf clubs, whatever else. So we've tried to utilize every nook and cranny to create the storage space.
Okay, can you speak a little bit about the fencing that you have that borders your boundary line to the High Line? If that's a solid wood fence, or is it a viewing wood fence where there's slats that?
We're envisioning, as you see on. Oops. Yeah, this is the middle. I thought I had it. There we go. So we're envisioning a split rail fence. The solid fence is what was installed by the county. This isn't our fence. This is on county property. It exists, and it's along the existing South Quebec Way trailhead. So then our neighbor to the north has an existing fence as well. So the fence, to the extent that we're installing fences, we want to open up the views. We want this to be as connected as possible. So we have the split rail fence, which is along the High Line Canal, along our boundary here, and then we have this guardrail type, heavy timber where we have bought the detention area just for safety purposes.
I know, because that was a consideration of the Nature Conservancy, that there was a view through, so that there was a feeling of openness for the trail.
Yes, indeed. And we came out, we met with Harriet Lamar, Crittenden Lamar, and John Hostere, and the rest of the Conservancy group. Brought my landscape architect, who's also a very close friend of mine, and we had an immediate connection as to our goals. We really want to integrate as best we can with the High Line and try and, I think because the Conservancy group is kind of just getting traction, where they're still developing some of the landscape criteria, but we are very open to continuing that dialogue and embracing what that group and Denver Water will ultimately land on in terms of landscaping. We don't want to block off the High Line. We don't want to turn our back to it. We want to embrace it and integrate as best we can with it.
Additionally, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to do this, but is there any estimate of what the number of feet is between the line where the single-family homes are? I understand the High Line comes, and then you come after that. What is on average that number of feet, linear feet, between the houses over there, and your development?
You can't see the houses. They start just beyond the frame of view. I think I might have one more picture that shows the houses. Let me see. Here we go. So here's the relationship. Maybe I could take a minute to explain the relationship. The tableland that's up here is roughly 50 feet higher than South Quebec Way. The High Line is 30 feet higher than South Quebec Way. So from the High Line up is another 20 feet to the tableland, and then as you can see, we're still with the primary living level below the High Line. So most of the views, to the extent that you can see over the trees or through the trees, you're pretty much looking over the top of the roofs. From a distance standpoint, I don't believe there's any point, any structure, any single-family home, the closest point is still more than 200 feet from the nearest proposed townhome, more than 200 feet.
And also, if you could, because just to give a perspective, where the other multifamily housing is in relation to yours. I know on one side there is multifamily, but if you could just point out where those multifamilies are located with your laser pointer.
So there is one remaining single-family home that's not a part of the assemblage that separates us from the existing multifamily. And this, again, is a very similar format. So as you proceed northwest along South Quebec Way, there's a consistency to the product form, and it's a townhome format, and it's integrated into the rising terrain because that's what you have to do to solve the problem. And this, I'm not sure of the exact vintage of this development here, but as you go all the way up to Florida, there is, of course, the senior living facility, but as you go north of the senior living facility, there's a very tastefully done, more Mediterranean style or Italianate community that has, again, used that same product form, parking, living, sleeping, integrating into the land to step its way up the grade. So it's not like we're geniuses in solving this. It's been solved before, but the form is to put the parking at the lowest level, primary living in the middle, and sleeping above. Similarly, if you look at these new single-family homes constructed in Denver County, they step the other way. They're trying to get as high as they can, but they're facing grades that are slipping off, so they have commanding views from their bedrooms and from their living levels out over the tops of the trees, and then they have walkout basements that slope down to the High Line.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one question about the landscaping. Obviously, you have removed all the existing trees, and one of the concerns of the High Line group was that you increased the landscaping. Is there going to be any room, and what size are you intending along the canal.
We have submitted a landscape plan as obviously part of the final development plan. We will get very specific as to that plan. We, again, look forward to working with and receiving additional guidance from the Conservancy, working with the Conservancy and Denver Water as to that plant palette. Very sensitive to water utilization and the plant forms. Most of the trees that are on site right now are nearing or already at the end of their life. There's a lot of dead trees. There's a lot of volunteer growth, undesirable species. If I go back to the existing, it's not been very well maintained, to put it candidly, for many, many years. There's a lot of dead trees in here. There's dead trees in the site. And because this slopes up, there's several hundred old car tires that were used to stabilize the grade. This is probably a 1-to-1 slope in this area, just screaming downhill into the property. There's old sheds that are back in the low area that comes up to this. So we've got a lot of work to do to clean up the existing area and then integrate our product form into the land. Unfortunately, as we integrate, we're changing the grade, and none of the existing trees would be able to be saved. Those beyond our property boundary, for sure, but we will come back with a comprehensive landscape plan.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have one more
Mrs.
question.
Watson.
So I appreciate that you have the community open space in your plan. One question I have is, how do the people at the north end of your development get down and access that?
So we do have, let's go back to the, let's see here. So again, one of the biggest challenges is this changing grade, 30 feet from South Quebec Way up to the High Line. So we have some guest parking over here, and we have a sidewalk. If you see it, this sidewalk comes here, it crosses at an ADA accessible grade, and it actually, even though the trees are shown here, it winds its way up and then continues all the way over where it connects to this the community fire pit and barbecue area. So the front doors, these are almost two-sided structures in that there is a front door adjacent to each of the garage doors, but at the same time, there's also a deck, outdoor living space, and a door leading to that that's accessible in everywhere you see the sidewalk. So the sidewalk has been designed in a way that leads people to these decks, and that access route is here. So they can exit either out the back door and walk around, out the front door, cross the street onto the sidewalk, and then come to the community gathering area.
What is going to happen with the drainage area? You say it's naturalized, you're going to keep it?
It's naturalized. This is a dry bottomed basin that has been designed in accordance with all the applicable codes. It's obviously been reviewed. We've submitted our preliminary drainage plan, and that will obviously be finalized.
So it won't be usable.
No, this is
walking the dog.
I suppose people will probably use it for walking the dog on dry days, which are a lot. But because we have this access, maybe I forgot to mention that we are connecting right here to the existing path. So this, again, the grades are very challenging in here. There is, while you've got the trailhead here, this is not an accessible route because of the severe grade change. The accessible route is further to the south. So we're connecting. We have a similar challenge. We tie in from adjacent to our handicap spot, and we come up at a very gradual grade with this sidewalk. We come off that down a set of steps to meet this path here through an opening in the fence line that we're going to create. So we're connecting. Our expectation is people that are walking their dog, they're going to go on the High Line. I suppose if there's inclement weather, they might use this, but most of the people are going to take advantage of the proximity of the High Line.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I have one more question. Your developments in the Chicago area, have you condoized any of your townhome developments?
No.
Are you planning to condoize this at some point?
And it could be in the future. We're certainly building to for sale quality, but that's not our intent. Our intent, we see a long-term rental market, and it could be that 8, 10 years from now that it certainly presents itself for conversion to condominium ownership. It's been designed very much like what I would have otherwise designed as a for sale product. But it's our purpose and intent is to operate it as a multifamily community.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Molly, did you want to make any comments? Okay, no other questions from the Planning Commission. We will open the public hearing, and we note that there are quite a few of you here, and a lot of you have signed in. You're all welcome to speak. If there's any way you can have one person represent your point of view, it would be helpful. Otherwise, we're going to ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes apiece. And please state your name and address. And I will read the names as they've been signed in. The first one is Colleen Casper.
Thank you. Colleen Casper, 1879 South Xenia Court, a 40-year resident of Colorado who visits Chicago frequently, but I prefer Colorado, and a resident of Mountain View Gardens. When I read the 4 square mile development, sub-area development plan, what I read is that the recommended urban residential densities is up to 12 designated units per acre. So nowhere in the document did I read 13. In fact, the recommendation is 1 to 6 dwelling units per gross acre, with high-density development being limited to main arterial roads. And those are further defined in the sub-area development plan to be 4-lane roads. Most of you may or may not know that South Quebec Way is a 2-lane road at best. Secondly, let's see, I think I covered that already. So life in the 4 square mile. I appreciate the work the developer has done in larger metropolitan areas, and I appreciate the thoughtful questions you all have asked. The current traffic on South Yosemite and South Quebec Way is such that it is not uncommon for it to be backed up, both east and west, north and south, from 3:30 to about 7 p.m., from formal Quebec to Beadler, and from maybe this property line up to Quebec. I travel it frequently trying to get around Parker and Iliff. And when people are frustrated getting around Parker and Iliff, they cut through South Uinta Way. This has been frequently discussed with your group. So I just request that you think about this property not as a standalone property. What hasn't been included in any of these beautifully designed documents is, number one, most of the multi-density, multi-unit developments are in Denver County. So we're setting a new precedence for Arapahoe County. It does not address the I have it here to be exact, 190 apartments currently being built a mile away on Parker Road in Ulster, also known as Sky. You probably know it better than I do. Skyline, Skymark, I get them confused. And then there's 121 single-home development occurring about a quarter of a mile from this development. All will be feeding into South Quebec Way and Florida and Iliff and Parker, which are both overburdened right now. My last point is a little bit sensitive, but from a conflict of interest standpoint, I think there's a possibility, and I do respect your work, but there's a possibility that rezoning this to this kind of densities, there are developers in a decision-making mode that could benefit financially from this. And I would ask that transparency be included in your thoughtfulness and vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person who signed up is George Nez.
I'd like to congratulate the designers.
Please make your comments toward the planning commission.
My name, George Nev.
You need to speak to us, please, and can you get to the microphone?
Okay.
Please, thank you.
George Nez, NEZ, living near this project on the higher land, and formerly a planner myself. I was planning director of Denver for 10 years. I want to congratulate the designers for packing in so many units on a difficult site, a very difficult, challenging site, both on the High Line side.
You need to make your comments to the planning commission. This way, please.
Yes. In any case, they did a pretty good job of design, given the steeply sloping land. Now, when we do the numbers of how many people would fill this project, you can easily get near 300, of which about half are young people, children, people who like to play games, people who like to walk dogs, all that. And this has been overlooked. That is to say, there's hardly any open space for any public common games or activity. The tiny so-called open space is about 1/8 of an acre, and it's surrounded by parking and roadway. So, to make this all very short, the overload for outdoor exposure and recreation is lacking because of the density that is necessary if they want to put 56 apartment units on this 4-acre tiny piece of land. And the future will look like invading to the eastward beyond the High Line Canal, whether or not it's with a footbridge. There's land over there, and it's dry. It's a dry High Line Canal most of the time anyway. The children will all go right through there. I know because I often walk there, and I see that. So that there's a danger there of trying to expand the real public areas informally across the High Line to the eastward. And you, as a planning commission, could possibly make recommendations that that land should not be overspill land to accommodate this density which is too high. Thank you. I don't know whether you want to raise any questions. I can't hardly hear. I'm suffering from anesthesia shock. I just had an operation recently, so I'm not very good at hearing, but I would be glad to discuss it with you or with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The third speaker signed up is Janet Cook.
I'm visiting. I'm just hanging. I just put a dash. I'm visiting. Next.
The next one is Lynn Swab.
Hello, my name is Lynn Suave, and I live at 7676 East Arizona Drive, and I'm in unincorporated Arapahoe County as a homeowner. And the first thing I'd like to say is that I am sympathetic to homeowners when they're faced with development projects which upset the apple cart, construction issues, and I can certainly speak to that being a homeowner with the whole Skymark project that was mentioned before, so I'm very sympathetic. However, with that being said, I am in favor of this project for the following reasons. I'm in favor of it because it is within the land use, the multi-use designation for the 4 square mile sub-area plan. And I say this with a fair level of confidence because I studied this plan significantly when we were going through the Skymark project. This project also is within the density and height restrictions according to the 4 square mile sub-area plan. There does seem to be quite a bit of confusion about that, and I've read the packets from individual emails, and so perhaps at some point somebody could clarify that. But from where I sit and from what I've studied, I stay with what I say. The other reason I'm in favor is because the developers came to 4 square mile, and I'm on the development committee. They came to us early on and were very forthright with what they were going to do and had interaction. And I always appreciate that rather than developers who try to spring something on you or misrepresent their project. And then finally, I'm in favor of it because visually, if you drive up to that project now from South Quebec Way, it is a real eyesore. There's 3 or 4 really dumpy homes, and there were comments made about the trees, and they're pretty much dead. So at least from the standpoint of the visual from South Quebec Way, I think it would be an improvement, particularly if the landscape was clarified and there were new trees put in. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. The next speaker signed up is Margaret Klausner from South Uinta Way. No, I'm sorry. My mistake. Janice Harnack from South Quebec Way.
I wasn't sure if I...
Yes.
I'm Janice Harnack, 1818 South Quebec Way, which is Emerald Valley, which is directly north of this proposed complex. I'm against this. I have lived in Emerald Valley since 1989. Seen the neighborhood change a lot. I appreciate, this is like the worst nightmare to have rental units. I was really worried, but now that I see that they're luxury rental units, that's a little bit better, and the price. So hopefully these will be a better quality of people, because we have had a lot of trouble with renters in our place. Tons and tons of problems. I'm losing my train of thought here. I'm sorry. I have an issue with the traffic. I live off the corner. There's a blind curve coming around, and with this new development, I had heard it was 220 homes at Iliff and Yosemite, but whatever it is, it's going to add to the traffic even more. This will add even more. I feel it's just too many units. It's going to be a very stark, ripping out everything. I understand the trees are bad. I'm glad that was explained. But the way it's proposed, it's just stark buildings in your face on the canal. I walk on the canal twice a day. I have done this since 1989, and it's going to totally transform that part of the canal. We're going to lose the feel for the canal in that area, and there's going to be more people, more dogs, more loose dogs. People come, they park in the South Quebec Way parking lot, and they go up and let their dogs run loose. They think it's an off-leash dog park. I have trouble all the time. And it's going to get worse. People are lazy. I know that these people think that everyone's going to walk up to the canal and walk their dogs, but they won't. They'll be walking around the complex, and they'll be pooping and all kinds of stuff. So the fact that they don't have a dog yard is going to hurt them, I think. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, now Margaret Klausner.
I don't think I signed up.
I signed up, Margaret Hefner.
Oh, Margaret Hefner did. Is there confusion there?
Have a Margaret Klausner?
No, I'm not speaking.
Okay. And then we had Harold Klausner?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Margaret Hefner.
Thank you.
Thank you. I figured, the 3 times the charm. I don't know if any of you have seen the bumper sticker recently. It says, Colorado's full, try Kansas.
I'm here. I live on South Uinta Way. I moved there in 1971 when there was barely anything there. And I realized that development is inevitable. I appreciate good development, and I'm not anti-development. However, this land is currently zoned, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, 1 DU per acre. And the application to go from 1 DU per acre to 13.6 is a dramatic change, and I think unwarranted. Granted, there are other multifamily units close by. Most of them have been there for a long time, and most of them, the setback from the canal is greater. I understand that the total height that is being allowed here is 45 feet. The developer stated that the canal is currently 30 feet above from Quebec Way. So that means, if my math is right, that even if you start those buildings right at Quebec Way, they're going to be 15 feet higher than the canal. I'm not talking about the major living center, but the bedrooms and the roofs are going to pretty much block off that entire section of the Highline. The drawings that were presented show that there's not a lot of open space between buildings. It's pretty much just a long row of houses very, very close to the canal. And I agree it's going to change dramatically the feel of the canal, and also the infrastructure does not allow this kind of development. I don't know how many of you have the misfortune of having to try to get through on Florida at rush hour or in the morning, but it's a nightmare and it's becoming worse all the time. I would submit to you guys that as planners, yes, you have an obligation to promote development, because I understand it's important for Arapahoe County to have adequate tax base. I do understand that. However, there's also a responsibility to the residents who are currently there and to the taxpayers who are currently there. And when density becomes about so extreme, actually home values do not increase, they actually decrease. Increased density does not mean enhanced value for surrounding neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last speaker signed up is Amon Phillips from South Quebec Way.
Yes.
Amanda, I'm sorry, I misread.
So I'm at 1811 South Quebec Way, and I've been there about 25 years, and I'm opposed to this. I'm kind of nervous. I've never been to one of these meetings before, but I'm representing maybe 15 of my neighbors who couldn't make it tonight. In addition to what the young lady just said, the one prior, a lot of us have concerns about tons of their issues also about the lack of parking. Now, if the parking 112 spots, they're going to be underneath the townhomes? Is this right? Okay, so there's only 27 guest parking spots, right? So I think the fire lanes are very, very small, like they are at Emerald Valley. Like you can't park behind your unit. You've got to be in your unit. In other words, they've got to be very careful to leave the room for the fire trucks to get through. And our concern is with only 27 guest spots, you know, you're dropping off your groceries. Oh, I'm just going to be a minute. And your cell phone rings, this and that, fire breaks out, our townhome's just burnt. It took 70 firemen and about 20 fire trucks to put out the fire that, thank God, up above didn't kill anyone, but it destroyed 5 townhomes that are in the middle and they connect at Granville. 10 per section. With all of these connected, and with, let's say, somebody's blocking the fire lane, God forbid, all would, you know, be more easily burnt. Okay. And if I'm understanding the fire lanes part any wrong, let me know. But okay, I truly oppose it going from single family to multifamily for a ton of their reasons, and I don't like how it is so close to Highline Canal. Yes, those homes were older and junkier, but wow, wouldn't it be cool if we put 2 nice units, like really nice homes, on each of those lots? And just sounds, oh, let me get to this. Thank God I have my phone notes. I'm very upset that these are going to be rentals. That's what really threw me. And I see that there's, with the rentals, granted, they're nice. They're going to be, they look more luxurious than I anticipated. But as we all know, with apartments and rentals, our home values go down. There's going to be more crime. There's crime right now galore. Stuff's going on galore. Traffic already has been mentioned. This dog walking thing, there is, like she said, there is no way they're going to go up on the Highland Canal if you need a potty break really quick at night. And I don't see where they have much walking area. And Quebec Way, I'm glad they're adding a sidewalk. Otherwise, they'd be walking in dirt, mud, and snow because it's just dirt. I don't see really any play area like this nice gentleman mentioned. Kids, you know, in the access, and then we've got the encroaching on, I know we're growing and all that, but it's just so close up to Highline Canal, the coyotes, all that. It just seems so crammed in there. And when we heard 56 and 4 acres, it's just too compact. And in addition to what's going on at, you know, this humongous development at Islet and Yosemite, Quebec Way, whatever. So I see the crime going up. It's going to lower our property value. Not enough parking. Worried about fire dangers. Who's going to monitor these cars that are blocking fire lanes? Especially with these being, well, I shouldn't say especially, but I don't know if them being rentals means there'll be less monitoring for parking violations. But like our fire, there have been 3 fires around our area, as you guys know. It's scary because they're so densely packed in there. Okay, I'm almost done. There weren't enough signs posted about this going on. There was just that one white one. And I wish there had been something more accessible. A lot of people didn't even know this was happening. Even close by neighbors. Did I hear there were going to be 5 bedrooms on some of them? 3 bedroom at the most?
That we're going to answer later.
Yeah.
If you need to wrap it up, please.
Okay, so, darn it. Okay, I forgot my last question, but we appreciate y'all taking that into consideration and just, you know, the Highland Canal needs to breathe nature and all that stuff, and it just feels like it's so dense, and the rental part concerns a lot of us. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the people that have signed up. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Mr. Lampert.
Mark Lampert, 9022 East Colorado Drive. Tonight I'm here on behalf of 4 Square Mile Neighborhoods. As you can tell, that's a little contested here, not your normal, always anti. First of all, I must tell you that we have here a developer that came from out of state, listened to the county. County told him to talk to 4 Square Mile before you get involved in this area and come and talk. We had numerous meetings with the developer, both the 4 Square Mile Development Committee as well as a large presentation. And at each time, the developer was very receptive to our requests and needs. And basically, a lot of those were similar to what the Highline Canal Conservancy spoke of, and they addressed those. And they are, I think, taking a development that could go even higher development-wise with the units. As you saw from the standpoint of 13 to 25 on this area as the sub-area plan allows for. And as we have stated numerous times before you and previous boards, that we are always looking for quality developers with quality product. And that's what we think we have here tonight.
We think that the fact that we're always looking for the lower amount of density, that's what we're trying to say. Because remember, 4 square mile was started because high-density developers were coming in and developing large complexes of less than quality product. And that's what got 4 square mile started. So it's been our plan always to have responsible development by responsible developers. This product is very similar to what Villa Marbella, which is right down on a corner of South Quebec Way in Florida. It's on the south side of Florida right there. The driveway and everything like that is very similar because of the high slope from Quebec Way up to the canal. So it's very similar from that standpoint. One of the things that we felt was an imperative for this development to get going, and they conceded to that, and that is to try to tie into the trailhead. Since we have the new trailhead right there, it was quite important that we utilize that and not block it off. At first, there was discussion to put up a fence from Quebec all the way to the canal, and that has opened up, as you saw. There's a pathway in there to tie in so that they can have access there. The only concern that we always have, and you've heard me say this numerous times, and I'll say it again and again, tandem garages don't always work, as we know. Tandem garages are great for one person to store one car and use another car. But we know time and time again, as we have seen in Whisper Sky, in previous developments, where it says they use it for their count, but it never works out to get 2 cars. First in, last out. That's a very difficult thing for couples to have sometimes. So if there is ever a negative, the negative is the tandem garages don't always work. They turn into a storage at the head and then 1 car space. So again, those are more concerning, but the fact that this is a rental project makes it a little bit more palatable because there'll be most likely on-site management or better management than an HOA manager is. And because of that, they can monitor that and possibly try to put that into their leases that garages have minimal amount of storage. So again, as you see, 4 square mile basically overall is in favor, less those that have previously spoke for obvious reasons because they're adjacent to it. But basically, we feel from a standpoint better to have a quality development that looks nice along the canal than to have the land that's there now that does not look well. So again, we'd love to have open space from now until the end of time, but we know that development is going to occur. We just want to make sure our fingerprint, our footprint are on those plans as well, and they have. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that...
Quick thing to my comment?
Not right now, thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Dr. Edmund Casper. I'm at 1879 South Xenia Court. I wasn't going to speak, but it's a very nice development. I mean, they've done a really beautiful job, it looks like. And taken alone, it's a beautiful development. Taken as what's going on in all this neighborhood, and regardless of what this gentleman just said, if you come down and try to drive on Florida or Parker or Mexico, you cannot drive there. It will take, and if you go to Quebec, you cannot get anywhere. Now, you're the planning commission, and you've already approved 200 or more homes at the end of South Quebec Way. And now you're going to approve this at this density. It just does not bode well for living in that area that has been so beautiful. I've lived there 30 years. It does not bode well. And when you're planning, you have to look at the total picture and not just this one nice development. I mean, it's a nice development. But in terms of safety, if a fire truck or an ambulance or somebody has to get into this development, I doubt they're going to get into it. So I just thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to make comments that hasn't spoken before? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the applicant to make any responses. We've closed the public hearing. Go ahead.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for receiving our plans. We have worked hard. We've attempted to do what's in the best interest of the community and what is in keeping with the 4 square mile plan. So we hope you will look favorably upon our plans and look forward to and hope you'll to be here, part of your community. Thank you.
I have one more question before you go. Would you please describe what type of on-site management you're planning for this community, if any, how the complex is going to be managed?
This would be a professionally, or will be, a professionally managed community. Ideally, we'd have somebody that would like to live there and manage the property. But the actual final management terms of agreement have yet to be worked out. But it would definitely be a professionally managed community. And I think to address some of the parking concerns, we would absolutely enforce the parking regulations that cars must be parked in the garage.
Okay, so the question arises, I know I just asked you about on-site and you don't know what's going to happen yet, which I do understand. However, even if you do have a professional management company managing this, it is going to require somebody to go by there every day to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, not like, some disgruntled occupant is going to be calling us with a complaint at some point.
Oh, obviously by the size, the price point, the amenities.
Yes.
This is a luxury, high-end community which you anticipate to attract people who are looking for that maintenance-free lifestyle, and we will clearly explain the rules of the lease. And the beautiful thing about the rental community is if somebody doesn't follow the rules, they don't get renewed. And if they are in gross violation, they get evicted. So there's much more control to the behavior of a resident as a rental than there is in a for-sale community where somebody could flout the rules. It's very difficult to get them removed.
Not here, it's not. We have HOAs that control most of the communities. Yes, can you speak to the traffic study that you had performed?
For that reason, I have the expert here. So I'm not an expert in traffic, but I know one.
My name is Chris McGranahan. I'm a professional traffic operations engineer with LSC Transportation Consultants, and we did the traffic study for this project. So I'm here to answer questions.
Can you describe your traffic study and what you factored in, and did you look at existing, did you account for the future development that's been approved, et cetera?
So for the size of the project, the amount of trips that a project generates in Arapahoe County dictates how big of a traffic study we're required to complete. Because it may be 56 units, but that's considered a relatively small project in the grand scheme of things. So we were required to look at the existing traffic and then the traffic that the year that the project is finished. So we looked at existing, which at the time was 2017 because we did this about a year ago when we entered the process. And then we looked at 2020, so 2 years from now. So we looked at what's going to happen over the next couple of years, not what's going to happen 20, 30, 40 years in the future. So we looked at, obviously, the 2 driveways on Quebec Way. Let me make sure I don't misspeak on the names of the streets. We were required by the county staff, we analyzed the intersections of Evans Avenue to the south and Colorado Avenue to the north. So those were kind of the first bigger public intersections on either side of our project. The traffic volumes on Quebec Way, while it depends, I guess, on what your idea of busy is, it's a couple hundred cars in each direction at peak hour, which clearly is not what Iliff or Parker Road are. We looked at this project as a positive of connecting the sidewalk on the east side of Quebec Way so the folks to our north now can walk to the trailhead access. This site's got what we'd like to see in a multifamily development. It's got multimodal options. There's a bus route along Quebec Way, and there's a multi-use path behind the project. So we looked at this as from a traffic perspective, it's a little more traffic in the area, but this is going to bring residents closer to where they want to work. If this wasn't done, those folks would live in Parker, Highlands Ranch, Centennial, and drive through these areas on Parker Road and I-25 and be the same amount of traffic. It's just now they're a little bit closer to where they work. So to us, this immediate area can handle this traffic. Clearly, if you get out to Iliff, there's a lot of traffic. The county has a plan to widen Iliff, including improving the intersection with Yosemite, which is actually the south end of Quebec Way. And as you go north, you get to the all-way stop at Florida, which backs up pretty bad. It's in Denver. What I like to say about all-way stops is they're frustrating, but they don't really cause any issues other than delay. Like traffic signals that are bad, people make really stupid decisions and cause safety issues. So the all-way stop, it does back up quite a bit. There's no getting around that, but it is in Denver. We're not aware that they have any plans to improve that. We do know that on the south end at Iliff, the county has plans. It's been in the works for quite some time to do those improvements. I think we're actually getting really close to seeing those. I think next year maybe is when that's going to happen. So it was a traffic study that was scoped with county. We actually had to come in and meet with staff to figure out how big of a study will this be. So I think it was well vetted with staff, just like all the other stuff was. So, you're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion and/or what your pleasure is.
I'd just like to say that I commend the developers for working with the Highline Conservancy. I think that's a very big deal right now to do that and the thoughtfulness of this project.
Yes, it was very nice. So very good. I also appreciate the fact that the 4 square mile area commented on the fact that they were approached early on, and that helps us. It helps me. So thank you. Any other comments or?
Yeah. And I appreciate, that they're in compliance with the sub-area plan. I think my only comment looking at your plan was, I have a little bit of concern about the expanse of the buildings being 100 to 120 feet long with one long hip roof, and that if it were at all possible to soften that architecture, I think that would be friendlier to the canal.
I would agree with your conclusion. Thank you. Any other comments?
I think we need to have Ms. Larson come back up and just to explain what the density actually is. I think there's some confusion about that overall. Thank you.
So, in reference to the sub-area plan? So the sub-area plan for 4 square mile has designated that property as multifamily. The density that's allowed for that type of use is 13 dwelling units per acre up to 25. The applicant is proposing 13.59, so it's on the lower end. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And for our public that's here tonight, I think that's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the Planning Commission?
I have a question about what you just said.
We can't address that right now. Is it pleasure of the Planning Commission? Do you want to discuss it some more, or is anybody ready to make a motion? Mrs. Lance? Thank you.
Chairman Rick, I'll make a motion. In the case of P17-018, there on the Highline Specific Development Plan, the Planning Commissioners have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and the public comment as presented at the public hearing. I hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following conditions 1 through 6.
Do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second.
Mrs. Chapman seconds the motion. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Denver is good at
Before we move on to the presentation by Larry Mugler on a demographics update, there were some minutes distributed with the agenda, and did you approve? You did approve those, okay. I was over there fussing with the computer, so I missed that. So I'll circle back around and find out who did the motion in a second. But you made the motion, and Catherine made the second. Okay, great. Okay, so maybe if we could just give people a few minutes to clear out, then Larry Mugler can come up and do his update.
My computer. I have the cord if it speaks back to me. Send over the rest.
No bridge. 300 feet spilling over. No bridge. No bridge.
So you're looking at
Life was off.
Ready? Hey. It's all yours. All right. Larry Mugler, I think I've met all of you at one time or another, but it's been some time since I did a demographic presentation, and quite a few of you are new since that was completed. So I thought it might be good for you to, some of you get a refresher, some of you to hear this for the first time. If you don't see my weekly email note, this will be a chance for you to catch up on those, or if you have some questions about it, we can talk about it a little further. I'm going to start out at the county level and just highlight a couple of the things that are going on at the county. Arapahoe County is the third largest county in Colorado. This is 2016 data from the American Community Survey that the Census Bureau does. They estimated the county at 688,000 people then, 637,000. This is the 12 largest counties in Colorado, so you can see that we're the third largest there. Denver had the largest numerical gain. You can see they grew almost 90,000 people in those 6 years. Arapahoe County grew substantially, about 50-some thousand, so growing well. Weld County had the greatest percentage change. You can see they're well down the list here, but they've been growing pretty rapidly. If you look at the age distribution, the median age is that age at which half the people are older, half the people are younger.
For Arapahoe County in 2016, that median age was 36.5 years, just below the state median age of 36.7. In fact, as I go through this, it's amazing how much Arapahoe County reflects the state as a whole. So if a researcher wanted to come out and study a smaller area but be pretty typical of the state as a whole, Arapahoe County is your place to come and do that. 24% of the population was under 18 years of age, and 12.5% were 65 years or older. And while all the age groups grew between 2010 and 2016, that population over 65 showed the most increase, adding 21,500 people in those 6 years. So that's part of why the reason the median age has been going up. So that's kind of the overview of the county as a whole, but since your activity focuses on the unincorporated area, I'll spend more time there. And this is a quick map. The area in yellow highlights where the unincorporated area is. A lot of the data I split out by county commissioner district, so I tried overlaying the districts on there, but then you can't quite see where the unincorporated area is, so I drew red lines around it. So down there in Commissioner District 1, you can see there's just a couple of pockets of unincorporated land in that one. In Commissioner District 2, which is where we're located right now, there's the area in Dove Valley and north of Arapahoe Road that's unincorporated. In County Commissioner District 3, of course, has the whole eastern part of the county, but it also has some pieces of Aurora and Centennial that have unincorporated areas around them. District 4 has this 4 square mile area, and that's just about the only unincorporated area in District 4. So we pretty much, when we see numbers for District 4, you're getting data for the 4 square mile area, and there's no unincorporated area in District 5. That's all Aurora. The unincorporated area was growing from 1990 to 2000, and then Centennial incorporated. So that's the big drop in the blue there, is when the numbers switched over to the city of Centennial. But since then, the unincorporated areas continue to grow, and in fact, it's been growing at a quicker rate than Centennial has been growing. Let's see, I've got the numbers here. Centennial grew by about 8% since 2000. The unincorporated area has grown by 14%. So it is a faster growing area. If we look at it by district, again, nobody in unincorporated part of District 5, about 6,000 people in District 1 in that pocket down there along Pike Canyon Road. And then the other 3 districts are all pretty much similar size in population, so fairly consistent across those 3. Household size, the household size in the unincorporated area is slightly higher than in the county as a whole. So we've got more people per house. And you can see the 3 districts 1, 2, and 3 also have higher household sizes in their part of the unincorporated districts than the incorporated part, except for District 4, because 4 square mile area has so many apartments in it, as you were just discussing tonight, that the household size is smaller than the county average for that district. Kind of more of an interesting fact here. This is a question where the census asks where the people in the household were born. And countywide, you can see about 18% were born overseas, but in District 4, 31% of the unincorporated people in District 4 were born outside the U.S. District 1 has the largest percentage of people born outside of Colorado, 50% of the people there, and District 3 has the largest percent that are natives to Colorado. Somewhat interesting, this is very similar to the county as a whole. About 80% of the people in 2016 had lived in the same house 5 years before. So this you can see the movement. That 1% from abroad, you can see over time those people that make up that 31% that were born overseas have been gradually coming in over the years. So most of them did not arrive in the last 5 years. If we look at the educational attainment and compare it to the county as a whole, 16% of the people 25 years and over, age and over, had a high school diploma or equivalent, and 50% of the people had a bachelor's degree or higher. That's the green, and the 90% there in blue is the people that have master's degrees or higher. Countywide, the comparable figures are 16% that are high school graduates, 20%, where the unincorporated area is 16%, and the college graduates are 40% compared to the 50% in the unincorporated area. So slightly higher education level in the unincorporated portion. 5% were dropouts. That's the orange and light blue wedges, which means that they had not graduated from high school. The lowest one is that they had less than a ninth grade education. Countywide, 8% are dropouts, so 5% compared with 8%. If we look at it by district, District 2 has the highest percentage of both high school grads and college grads. District 3 has the lowest percentage. Whoops, I was stated there. Statistically, it's the same. District 3 has about the same percentage of high school grads, but only 40% that are college graduates. It's interesting when you dig into the data there that part of the difference in District 3 is they have a lot of people that have a couple of years of college but have not graduated. So if we need a community college, it sounds like it ought to be out in District 3. I thought this was really interesting. The unincorporated area has a much higher median income than the county as a whole. The county as a whole, there is $67,000, where the unincorporated area is $81,000. District 5's all incorporated, their median income is the lowest in the county. For the unincorporated area, it's District 4 that has the lowest median income, and District 2 that has the highest for the unincorporated. It's really interesting that District 1, with just that pocket, it must be a fairly high income enclave there in the western part of the county. If you look at families in poverty, and again, the Census Bureau uses the Office of Management and Budget's definition of a poverty level, and it varies with size of household. So they have to take each of the samples and say, where does this family size fall within the definition for OMB of poverty? But you can see the numbers are pretty low here. I put the actual numbers in. So only 70 homes in District 1, 70 families that would fall into poverty, and that's just 5% of that particular sub-area. It is a sample survey, so the error range around that 70 is probably pretty high, but again, it's still, even at the upper end of an error range, it's probably around 100 that would be the maximum number. So these are numbers that are pretty good. If you look at how it's changed since 2010, things have improved. In 2010, about 1,600 families were in poverty. In 2016, that had dropped to a little less than 1,500. And about all the categories, the one that you usually worry about the most is that one on the far right, the female-headed households, and that also dropped between 2010 and 2016. So the unincorporated area economically seems to be doing somewhat better than they were in 2010. If we switch to just look at housing itself, this is the distribution of housing units in the unincorporated portion. And again, not too many in District 1. The other three are all pretty close to the same. The vacancy rate's pretty low. I think I have that compared to the county. County-wide, with incorporated areas included, was 4.5, and the unincorporated area was 4.2 in 2016. Pretty low vacancy rate. And it pretty well spread across the districts, highest in District 4 where you have all the apartments. And that shows up here. Only 26% of the housing units in District 4 are owner-occupied, so much higher rental rate there. The other three all have higher home ownership than the county as a whole. The Census Bureau also tries to find out why units are vacant. I think they usually do this by asking neighbors, but this is the results. There were 1,436 vacant units in 2016, and a third of those were vacant because they were up for rent and not currently occupied, and another 80 of them were rented but somebody hadn't moved in yet. So that's probably what you expect. It's somewhat interesting that there were only 86 units available for sale that were vacant. So very little opportunity for folks to move into a for sale unit. And then those last two columns, fairly high numbers for seasonal or recreational, and quite a few of them are in District 3. So I don't know if that's farm housing. Is there much farm housing in the eastern part of the county for workers? Some. Well, again, it's only 120 units, so some of those are probably that. Some of them are maybe snowbirds that were not in the county at the time that the survey took place. The other vacant is things that have been foreclosed or under reconstruction or whatever that weren't available for sale or rent yet. The county as a whole had about 56% single-family detached units. If you look at the type of structure, that's pretty close to the same in the unincorporated part, but it's very different across the four districts. Only 17% of the units in District 4 are single-family detached, where Districts 1 and 3 have over 80% that are single-family detached units. If you kind of look at the age of the units, let's see if I can explain this chart a little bit. The pyramids here kind of show the peak year the construction took place within that particular unincorporated part of the county. So in District 1, the 1950s were where most of those units were built. In Districts 2 and 3, those have been since 2000. They've had their peak building. And in District 4, that was in the 80s. So it's been kind of spread across the county. Distribution countywide is pretty similar for the unincorporated areas for the incorporated portion of the county. Then a couple of quality criteria. Generally, economists say that if you're paying more than 30% of your income for housing, you're housing burdened. And what this shows is that the unincorporated area compared to the county as a whole is pretty much similar. The orange line is people without a mortgage. So you would expect they're not going to have a lot of housing expenses, but you still have around 10% that are paying more than 30% for their other things, their electricity and insurance, et cetera. A quarter of the folks that have mortgages were housing burdened in 2016, and half of the folks that rent are paying or were paying more than that. You can see it's pretty similar across the districts as well. Both District 1 and District 4, the renters there, that over half of them are paying more than 30% for their rent. The other measure of quality is overcrowding, and that's usually measured by is there more than one person per room in the housing unit. You can see the numbers are fairly low in the three of the districts, but in District 4, again, the rental units in 2016 anyway, the 1 to 1.5 people per unit was 5%, and another 2% would be considered severely overcrowded, more than 1.5 people per housing unit. So that's the general picture of the unincorporated area. And then I thought I'd end here with what I included in your packet, and that's some details about where the comp plan had been focused, and that's on the Eastern Plains. So this is what we define as the Eastern Plains. And I know we've talked with you many times about the tiers. Tier 1 is the rose-colored area where we're anticipating the most growth. That's where Prosper and Sky Ranch are located. The Tier 2 is the rest of the corridor along I-70. And then Tier 3 is the green areas, the rural areas. And in my tables here, I split it out between the west and the east, and I labeled the east area Tier 3E. And if you look at the population, this shows the change from 2010 to 2016. Tier 1 was the one that showed the most growth, so that's good. That's where we'd like to see it happening. Tier 3E, out there east of I-70, The Census Bureau's found only about 49 housing units, people living out there in 2010. It had changed to 62 people in 2016. That's probably within the range of error on their survey. So around 50 people out there, not very many. Again, a lot of numbers on this chart, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. Tier 3 has the highest percentage of people under 18. Tier 3E has the highest percentage of people 65 and over. That's, again, 19% of 50 people, so that's 20 people or so. So it's not very many people, but it is the oldest of the tier areas. And not too many 18 to 24-year-olds in the eastern part of the county. Showed this table for the unincorporated area. This is for just the eastern area. And again, for the county as a whole, about 80% of the people were in the same house they had 5 years ago. Here on the eastern plains, it's 86%, so fewer movers on the eastern plains. And in Tier 1 is the closest to the county average. If you look at the racial characteristics out on the eastern plains, it has more non-Hispanic whites, has fewer of everything else, almost no black or African Americans, and almost no Asians. If you saw my email this week, you saw that Arapahoe County actually has more blacks and Asians than any other county in the state. So they're not in the East Plains part of the county. If you look at the type of households we have out there, pretty high percentage of married couple families. County-wide, it's only 66% that are married couple families. So all of the numbers here, no, let me look again. Yeah. Oh, okay. If you add together the blue and the orange columns, that's all the families. And that in the Eastern Plains is 76%. In the county as a whole, it's only 66%. So more families out on the Eastern Plains. It's interesting that Tier 3E has such a high percentage of householders living alone. So out of those 60 people, a lot of them are just single folks. Educational attainment, 35% of the 25-year-olds and over had a high school diploma, and 23% had a bachelor's degree or higher. This is a lot higher for high school and a lot lower for college than the rest of the county. And the dropout rate, the one clear on the left column there, those 500 people, that's very similar to the county-wide average of 8% dropouts. Again, kind of like the unincorporated part of the western part of the county, the eastern part of the county has substantially higher income than the county as a whole. I think I said it was $67,000 for the county altogether. It's $76,000 median income for the Eastern Plains. That's highest in Tier 1 and Tier 3, so that's kind of the western part of the eastern part of the county. And then Tier 3E, those 60 folks out there on the far eastern edge, have substantially lower income than the county as a whole. And that's reflected here in the poverty rate. Also substantially higher out there on that eastern part. The rest of it's very similar to the rest of the county. Employment is tricky to do, but the Census Bureau works with the Department of Labor to match up the labor statistics with the census counts. And so this is people who work in the Eastern Plains rather than people that live there. And you can see since 2005 or so, before the recession, the Eastern Plains have done pretty well. They were about 800 jobs out there in the early part of the 2000s, and they're now up to around 1,000. We hope to have the 2016 data by the end of September. And the three tier areas all kind of balance out about the same. Travel time, as you would expect out there, they have a longer commute. Countywide, it's about 25 minutes is the average commute. Out here on the Eastern Plains, it's about 35, so about 10 minutes longer. That those 60 people out on the far east, I think a lot must be farmers, so they don't have to drive very far to work. So they have the lowest commute time, but everybody else is pretty similar out there with a higher commute than the county average. And just the last couple of items about the housing units that are out there. About 3,100 housing units, a vacancy rate of about 7.7%, so that's higher than the county as a whole, where it was around 4%. And that Tier 3E, out of those 60 people live in 28 of the units, and another 8 of them are vacant. So again, it's a very small area. Not too many vacant units altogether out on the Eastern Plains. Mostly owner-occupied. Countywide, the figure is 62%. Out here on the Eastern Plains, it's 83%. And the 3 tiers plus Tier 3E are all around that higher number than the county average. Housing value, countywide, it's about $265,000 is the median housing value. Out here on the Eastern Plains, it's higher than that, about $330,000. And it bounces around from the tiers, with again Tier 3 substantially low. The countywide figures have about 56% single-family detached. Out here on the Eastern Plains, it's about 79% single-family detached. The other area where the Eastern Plains is high is in mobile homes, and those are clustered in a couple of spots on the Eastern Plains. So I think they have a substantial portion. I don't know if I had that in here. Tier 1 has 309 mobile homes, Tier 2 189, and the 2 pieces of Tier 3 had 47. It's fairly spread out among the tiers. And my last slide, I compared kind of like I did with the unincorporated area total. For the Eastern Plains, they have 2 clusters here, a high percentage of units that have been built since 1990 and a high percentage that were built in 1939 or before. So fairly older group of houses and then a lot more newer houses. So that's a quick overview of the county. You've got the Eastern Plains part in your packet if you want to look at it in more detail. If there's any particular number you'd like to know more about, send me a note and we'll dig it out of the data for you. Any questions? Sure.
Larry, would you want to, and sorry if I didn't pick up on this, maybe tell them a little bit about what you're doing on the census currently with the other communities?
Okay. We're starting to get ready for the 2020 census. A lot of this data comes from the annual survey that the Census Bureau does, so it builds off of what we knew in 2010. In 2020, we reestablished the benchmark for congressional districts for the state legislature, so we're starting to get ready for that. The Census Bureau has asked for help on a couple of things, and we participated in what they call the local updated census addresses. They sent us what they have as a complete address list of every residential unit in the county. Some of the cities did their review themselves. Centennial, Aurora, Littleton, and Inglewood all did their own. We did hold a couple of joint meetings to see what kinds of issues we were running into. For example, in some cases, the Census Bureau kind of put all the housing units for an apartment complex in one block when they're really spread out across several. And so we were having to figure out how do we split these housing units up in their computer program among the various blocks. But 2 of us at the county worked on that for our part, the unincorporated part of the county, plus we did it for Foxfield and Columbine Valley and a couple of other of the smaller communities, Deer Trail, that didn't have the staff resources to do it themselves. And we've sent that back to the Bureau, got a note that they'd received it, have not received any questions questions back on why did we move their houses around on them. They will do a couple of more rounds of collecting address data from primarily the post office to get units that have been built since this data was done in 2017. The next one that comes up is, I'm blanking out. Defining census tracts and block groups. So a lot of this data that in order for us to create it for these sub-areas like commissioner districts, the Census Bureau doesn't collect it by that. We have to put together an equivalency between their data, census tracts and block groups, into our criteria like commissioner districts. They give us an opportunity before each decennial census to review which census tracts have grown substantially and we can subdivide them. It's interesting, census tracts were originally done at the request of a clergyman in New York City who wanted to know more about his parish, and the Census Bureau just provided data for the city of New York as a whole. So they worked out a deal where they split it up into areas of about 4,000 people. So each census tract is supposed to be around 4,000. We have several census tracts in the unincorporated part of the county that are now well over 8,000. So they need to be split at least in half, maybe into 3 or 4, depending on how much they've grown. So we get to tell the Bureau where we'd like that division so we can cluster neighborhoods together and we get data that's more consistent. We are working with a couple of this, actually, the Denver Regional Council of Governments coordinates this effort. They will work with us, and if we do it the way it's been done in the past, they'll ask us to host a couple of countywide meetings to look over the maps, especially for tracts that we share with one of the cities, to say where do we split it. Usually we can't split it on the city line because in many cases you can't see the city line, and the Census Bureau wants something you can see. So we try to come as close to find a creek or a street or whatever that would mostly keep Aurora in their part of the tract and the unincorporated part of the county in our part of the tract when we split it up. So that'll happen around the first year. The other activity that they ask for help is getting hard to count folks to participate in the census. So in 2019 and into 2020, we'll be trying to encourage folks to respond to the census. In 2010, that was my job. I worked with Arapahoe County as well as communities in northeastern Colorado and northern Wyoming. Being not a full-time census person, we split Wyoming up, and the full-time census person got the close part of Wyoming. I got the far part of it. It was interesting. I got to go to Gillette and Sheridan and Jackson Hole. But what we did is we worked with communities, churches, all kinds of folks to have events. At the fair, we had a booth at the fair in 2009. We had one at 17 Mile House where we encouraged folks to participate. We'll be working with the county to put together a committee that says where are the pockets where we think people are not likely to respond. This is going to be the first time the Census Bureau has allowed folks to fill out the census online. So hopefully you'll have 3 ways. You can fill out the piece of paper form, you can call the Bureau and respond that way, or you can do it online. And if you remember in 2010, I think we said it was 5 questions to take 10 minutes to do it. It's the same thing here in 2020. So all this data about income and stuff isn't on the 2020 census. It's primarily just a count of who lives in your house, how many people live in your house, how old are they, what race are they, and that's about it. So we'll be getting ready to do that. We'll see if there are still 60 people out east of I-70. So that's what's happening with the census as we go forward. Sure.